6:41 here on a Wednesday morning, and we welcome now Metro Sheriff Joe Lombardo for our weekly Morning Cup of Joe segment. Sheriff Lombardo, good to see you again this morning.
Good morning, John. Good to see you.
So we start with the tragic case that we've been following for the better part of a week, the search now into the death of 2-year-old Amari Nicholson. It's a horrible case, obviously, and I know there's a lot of investigation still to be done on this. But just maybe can we talk a little bit about the challenges of an investigation like this for detectives to try and get some resolution?
Yeah, first and foremost, I want to send out my condolences to the family and try to get some modicum of understanding of what they're going through associated with this. It's a tragic event. And I appreciate you asking the question, John, because, you know, as you imagine, we're human beings also, and when we're dealing with a situation like this, it charges us emotionally, and especially when we can't get answers. And, you know, there's the life of a 2-year-old involved. And I think the most important aspect of this is for us to get information in a timely manner. Unfortunately, we were informed late in this process with the missing of the child. There was some assumptions that the child may have been with another family member, and then, you know, we subsequently had to get heavily engaged because when we realized there were some problems with the statements that were being made, and it required so Nevada Child Seekers assisted us in searching. You know, we have our officers on a major case protocol, which involves hundreds of officers involved in this case. So it was long drawn out, and we were acting on, you know, just small bits of information. And eventually, you know how the case ended up. Unfortunately, it is believed Amari's lost his life. And the unfortunate piece on this is it's going to be a no-body prosecution at this point because we're still attempting to locate this young man and where he may be. The suspect provided some information as to the whereabouts of the child, but that proved to be false. So we're continuing to move forward, and we're asking the public's help, and if they have any information that may help us locate this individual kid.
Such a complicated story, such a frustrating story, such a tragic story, and there are so many resources for people who are in danger, who are in trouble, and unfortunately they weren't used in this case, but we'll certainly keep an eye on that, Sheriff. Let's switch gears to another ongoing situation here in the Valley. It's also tragic. A lot of deadly crashes so far this year, and again, a lot of hit and run crashes. What is Metro doing to try and track these drivers down, and what should drivers who are involved in this, which they shouldn't be in the first place, what should they do?
Well, anytime you're involved in an accident, your first point is to render aid if you're able to do that, you know, or, you know, call for medical services if somebody's sustained injuries. And you are to remain at the scene and wait for the police to respond. If it's a non-injury accident and you feel comfortable in conversing with the other party, you can exchange information like your insurance and vehicle registration and all the things that you need to follow up on an accident with your attorney and or insurance companies. You can do that and go about your business. But if you want the presence of a police officer and not a crime report, but an accident report, it's your duty to wait there for the police officer to arrive, and they will walk you through the process. Now, if there's injuries involved, it's a mandate that a police officer responds and an accident report is done. If you leave the scene of the accident, the proverbial hit and run, if there is no injuries, it's an additional misdemeanor crime for the fault of the accident and for leaving. If you leave and there are injuries, it rises to a felony, and that's a B-level felony, which is, I believe, 2 to 20 years if you are convicted as such. So the important piece on this is, you know, you could be involved in a misdemeanor accident, but elevate it to a felony because you panic for various reasons. You may not have insurance, you may have warrants, you may be intoxicated. I guess there's a plethora of reasons associated with that, but there's no excuse for those actions, especially if somebody's injured.
And we've just seen so many of those collisions recently. Let's also now talk about...
You know what, John?
Yeah, sure.
Let me just build off that, back to your original question. So we have a robust investigation with all those. I think it's important for people to realize that You do a hit and run, you think you're going to easily get away with that, and what is most common is we get information off your plate or registration or video cameras, and the success that we experience here at LVMPD in locating the drivers of the other vehicle is very high. So it's important for people to realize that.
Let's finally talk about the budget, Sheriff. Last year, during the depths of the pandemic, Metro had to make a lot of budget cuts, a lot of tough decisions, hiring freezes. Where do things stand now as the Valley starts to come out of the pandemic?
Yeah, you're right. We did have to make some significant cuts, and we had some hiring freezes both on the policing side, the correction side, and the civilian ranks. And we even eliminated some programs. We anticipated the sales tax to be dire, which is a significant number associated with our budget, but with the federal stimulus, it wasn't as bad as we predicted. So with that knowledge and the ability to move forward and to go back to our 6 Academy a year program, we are increasing hiring and trying to get back to where we were previous to the COVID pandemic. But that doesn't happen overnight. It's like turning a cruise ship per se. It's going to take us around 10 to 12 months to get back to our original numbers that we experienced before.
And on that note, we've got a few seconds left here. We're in the middle of National Police Week, where we recognize the work of the men and women in law enforcement. Is it getting harder to retain and also just hire folks to join the force right now?
Yeah, it is. We had not a significant additional number of people separate from the police department during the pandemic, or last year. Let's use calendar year last year. We averaged right around 170 on the policing side on an annual basis. We had additional 60 people leave last year. And we are having trouble recruiting. Now, that could be a combination of people's perception of the police, George Floyd post events, and then people were in fear of the COVID. We were essential workers. We had to go to work on a daily basis, just like normal business, where other people had the ability to remain at home and sequester themselves from the pandemic, and we didn't have that luxury. So there was some fear associated with that. Now we're moving forward. People are getting inoculated, and hopefully we can increase those numbers as we continue to go forward. Now, we're still dealing with the perception of the police as a whole, but here locally, I think our community supports us wholeheartedly, and hopefully that won't be a problem.
Well, Sheriff, we thank you once again for joining us this morning. If you at home have a question for Sheriff Lombardo, you can submit it on 8newsnow.com. Find out if a question is answered every Wednesday. Sheriff, thank you once again for joining us this morning. 6:40.